let's have a talk about improvising. If you're a game master in the tabletop role-playing game hobby, improvising is making it up as you go. And it's something all game masters should be capable of doing. How do you make sure you can do it? Well, first off, if you're going to take the seat of the game master, you should really know the game well. And I mean well. It doesn't mean you've had to have ran it beforehand, but you should be the one that reads the books. You know, you should put a requirement on yourself. We don't put on players. Players just need to figure out how to make the character. You need to know about making the character, about running the game, about every single rule there is, your tools, your options, your limitations, where you might want to bend something. You need to master a game. And yes, part of mastering a game is by doing it, running it. But another part of it is understanding it from actually investing your time in reading the material. You know, we have some awful players in the tabletop role-playing game hobby. They're not always awful people, but we got a lot of insecure nerds that can get really good at these games, and they'll get into a game with a guy who only has so much prep, and they'll purposely run around the prep. They'll be good players. They'll actually do this in a very harmful way to that game master. And usually 100% of the time, it's the cool guy. It's the guy who has a lot of potential, who's really nice and decent. Strangely, they don't do this to the really awful acting, behaving game masters. Almost 100% of the time, it's always going to be against nice guys, cool guys, because they leave a door open for people to step on them. Because some nerds, well, first off, they're insecure and they need to feed a really false ego. But the other thing is they take kindness sometimes for weakness, because in the hobby, in this anti-social nerd hobby, being cruel towards people in the hobby is quite casual. It's like a normal thing. Normal behavior is not what goes on in large portions of the tabletop role-playing game hobby. And you're meeting a lot of people that in real life, they're not well respected. So when they get here into this bubble, they can be somebody, right? They can be important here. A skill that's not important to the real world is important in the tabletop role-playing game hobby. So you can try to build up some false ego while you're here. You're a really good player, you can run circles around that guy. What it does, in my experience, is it takes about 70% of those decent guys with a lot of potential and makes them leave the hobby, or at least leave the game mastering chair. They lose confidence, they think they can't do this. And it's not just insecurity, it's common sense. A lot of guys get to the point where it's like, look, I gotta know when to fold them. It's just not my thing. I'm just not good at this, so I'll give it up. And it's like you realize when you look at what they're doing, no man, you can actually do this, and you have a ton of potential. It's just players are purposely killing your confidence. And look, in some cases it can be weakness. Like, you shouldn't give up that easily. But in some cases, it actually is pretty reasonable to see a guy just go, maybe this isn't for me. And in some parts of your life, in some moments, you got to realize when you don't have it to do something. And you do got to fold them sometimes and walk away when that's not your thing. So there's a balancing act there when you're looking at the situation. But I've seen well over 50% of guys with a lot of potential leave the game master chair because of this. And then I got to ask those players that are doing this, how does it help you? You're looking for a good gaming session, right? Player, good player. And what happens when you kill the confidence of the person running the game? Well, you get awful sessions. And if they have the potential to give you something great, you get bad sessions instead. You do no favor for yourself, and you get about 15 seconds of feeding your false ego, which really doesn't do a lot for you over the long term, because you seem to keep needing to do this over and over again, like you're not satisfied with just a bit. You know what improvising allows you to do is to not get caught up with this prep situation where guys are going around your prep work. Maybe they're destroying it, maybe they're avoiding it. Well, if you can improvise like you would in a sandbox, something we learned early in the tabletop role-playing game hobby to do, and 99% of game masters could do, like breathing air. It's a lost sort of art now. You know, making stuff up as you go is not commonplace anymore, sadly, but what it does is it makes it that no matter what players are doing, you can keep up. The best player in the entire hobby can't run circles around you anymore or around your prep. Oh, you want to do something else? All right, I can go with that. Anything you want to do, I can do and keep up with you. And no matter how good of a player you are, being good, some people judge being good in the wrong way. Avoiding prep, knowing to avoid prep doesn't make a good player. A player that trips up game masters on purpose is not a good player, not even wise, obviously not intelligent, insecure and weak and antisocial. You might classify that somehow in your little tiny mind as being a good player. I call that a trash player. Someone who probably doesn't even belong in the tabletop role-playing game hobby. Get out! You don't belong here. You're not good enough to be at a table in one of these games. Because it is a group affair. It's a team sport. We are doing this together to achieve an activity. See, good players help the activity along. Crap players that are no good at what we do in this hobby make that process hard. You don't classify those players as smart or good. I don't care if they've been in the hobby for 30 years, 40 years, or gamed a lot. How many campaigns have they destroyed? How many game masters have they ran over in the worst way? How much potential have they destroyed? Well, quite a bit, to be honest. It's quite commonplace with people like that. So it's what do we classify as good? People that participate in the team and help these things along in the process. They don't bow the knee in some silly way, but at the same time, they're there to have a good time and have a good experience, not to ruin that experience at the table, and not to be the type of players that ruin potentially great game masters. It could take years to be really good at game mastering. So in those early years, you don't want players like that to run into game masters that have a lot of potential to be great in the long term, because it could take a long time. So long-term thinking in this hobby is very important, but a lot of people in this hobby think in the short term. And I mean it. You should see how content creators are on here. They can almost get nowhere, have one good night, and suddenly they think they're at the top of the mountain. And then a month later, when things aren't going good for them again, they're back to crying, they're back to depressed, and then they have another good night, whoo! And they don't even know what content they're going to do next week, let alone next year. That's the way a lot of people are in our nerdy, anti-social hobby. It just is. It's a backwards place to be. I love the game. And I love finding the individuals that are beyond this stuff. And we have plenty, but they do make up a minority in this hobby. The majority are backwards thinking people. And so we run into a lot of this nonsense. You know, I'll tell you this. Give me the best, most intelligent player in the hobby right now with the most experience. And if they try to run circles around me, they won't have a chance. I'll run circles around them like breathing air. I started game mastering at the age of 11, and 40 and 50-year-olds couldn't keep up with me who have been playing the game forever. Nobody's going to. I'm not even slightly worried about it. I can improvise like breathing air. You want to do something? I'll make something up. I don't have to worry ever about you ever getting ahead of me. Ever. Ever. Right? So I can have a bit of an ego on my end about these things. When I hear people, oh, that player is really good and he's tripping up the game master. Well, he wouldn't trip up me. No player has. No player will ever be able to. That's just the reality. But you want to know why? And this is why I want this art form to come back and being able to make it up as you go. It's because I can improvise really well. And most game masters back in the old school could as well. You know, a lot of guys don't have the confidence that they can just make it up as they go. They can. They're worried, and they don't know techniques that are going to help them. Like, look, sometimes you're trying to make it up rapidly. Take a breath, kid. Take a breath. It's okay to take pauses. It's okay to come with some tools, right? Ideas for random names, ideas that you can write down in notes. But that is actually part of your prep. If you have the time to write it the monster, why not write it some notes where you can help yourself thinking later? What if you do this? And then you got to trust that you can just, on raw, make stuff up as you go. But if you avoid improvising, trying to always put planned stuff in front of characters, the more you avoid it, the rougher it will seem going into it. And yes, if you avoid it, then that's something you're not exercising at all. So maybe in that first session where you try to do it, okay, you're not perfect, but you don't have to be. Look, that will improve, and pretty quickly if you just allow it to happen. You go into a game without fear. You don't expect to be perfect, and you make it up. And sometimes it might be really good. Sometimes it might not be exactly what you want it to be, but you'll just get better. That's how this works. Now here's the good news though. At one point you'll realize you can do this all the time. And once you can do it, well then you never have to worry if somebody skips your prepped plan, your prepped idea. And then you don't always need a third-party adventure. You can make stuff up as you go. You go back to the old school sandbox concept of running these games. But you need to be able to improvise, which is make it up as you go. And you want to do that, you got to master the game. You got to understand the rules. So it is your job to put more effort into the game than anybody else. But that comes with respect, or at least it should. It also comes with authority to manage the table. It is what separates you from the players. You're not just another player. They got to read the character section to make a character. You got to read the entire game. Every aspect of what you're doing is different in many ways from what they are doing. And it's why you have a different title. You're not just another player. You're the Game Master. And you're called the Game Master because of the authority you have and the work you have to do to earn that type of authority, to manage the table, to understand the game, and to be able to apply it as they go. You're working for players. That's why you earn the title. And you don't let anybody diminish that title by calling you just another player at the table. That's like saying your work is just as important as theirs. No, they do 5% of what you do. That's why you have a title that separates you from them. You're not just another player at the table. You are the Game Master. And anybody who wants to diminish you, well, they can suck ass in this hobby. Go play a solo RPG. Nothing against people that do solo. But if you don't respect the person who has to put in the most work, you can kiss my ass. And to act like that person doesn't put more work in than the players, well, that's just a deceitful agenda people are trying to run to have more control over a game while they put less time, they invest less into the game, but they want just as much say. No, if you want as much say as a Game Master, you invest like the Game Master. Game Masters have to take part of their life and invest it in a way into these games that players will never have to do. And that earns them respect. It earns them a spot, a higher spot in the hierarchy of this hobby. And that's how it works. And if players want that spot, they got to earn it. Become a Game Master, invest your time, put the work in. You don't get to get that spot for nothing, and you don't get to pretend that somehow you can bring the Game Master down who does more work than you'll ever do as a player and diminish their role so you can pretend to be up here. No, son, you're sitting on a cardboard box. Game Masters sit on the throne, and it will remain that way. That's the reality of this hobby. And we earn that throne. You appreciate you get to sit around the table on your cardboard box. You get a game out of the whole thing, right? And you don't have to put a lot of work in to get that game. Stop trying to mess with the most important role in this hobby. Even game designers have to bow their heads to the people that run the game. Look, it's like video games. Say PlayStation. PlayStation video games. Without a PlayStation, players and game designers, game creators, all mean absolutely nothing. They depend on the system to exist to be able to run the game. Without it, you got nothing. You got no market, no hobby, no nothing. There you go. Okay, for now, take care.